Fans of Cyberpunk are going to be waiting a long time for Cyberpunk Orion, but that doesn't mean that CD Projekt Red won't deliver us a fair bit of news as we lead up to the game. CD Projekt Red is usually more open about the news of their games, the state of their games, and when you should be expecting them, so we recently got some Cyberpunk Orion news, even though the game isn't even close to being released. It may not look like much, but I think there is some information we can extrapolate from this. Here's what it said. This article from VGC says that Cyberpunk 2077's sequel is aiming for the most realistic crowds in any game ever. Okay, it may not sound like much, but there are a few things that I would like to talk about here. We all know that this is probably corporation speak to try and make the game sound as good as possible, and if anything, I think Cyberpunk 2077's crowds aren't that bad, but everything can be improved upon. When you actually talk to a crowd of NPCs in Cyberpunk 2077, their dialogue is quite flat. There's a lot of realistic looking NPCs on the map of Cyberpunk 2077, but once you interact with them, the game kind of falls apart and it breaks your immersion. It's really good at showing, but not interacting with. So if the crowds in Cyberpunk Orion are something that CD Projekt Red are mentioning and wanting to improve upon, that begs the question, what else do we know about Cyberpunk Orion? Well, following the news that CD Projekt Red wants to make Cyberpunk Orion's crowds bigger and better, we also learned that Cyberpunk Orion will most likely be another first-person game. Okay, I guess that's some expected news. Cyberpunk 2077 was a first-person game after all, but these little bits of news are just leading us closer to that next big bit of news. But we also know a little bit more about the team who is building Cyberpunk Orion as well. We do know that Cyberpunk Orion will be built by a brand new studio based in Boston in the United States. What they're doing with this new studio works in more ways than you would think. For one, it allows them to meet directly with Mike Pondsmith if they ever need to. Mike Pondsmith is the creator of the Cyberpunk tabletop RPG game, and since he is of course the creator, he's pretty good at providing feedback, lore clarity, and just some general ideas for CD Projekt Red to bounce off of. Of course, since this is a new studio, we can actually get some Cyberpunk Orion content. Fans of Bethesda games will know all about the wait for The Elder Scrolls 6 because Bethesda is simply one team. After Skyrim was released, Elder Scrolls fans were going to be in for a long wait. They did Fallout 4 and of course they did Starfield, which means that there's over a decade wait for The Elder Scrolls 6. So that keeps the general flow of their IPs in this constant stream so we can get some new content for each of their IPs. But I don't think a new studio is all doom and gloom, nor is it going to be a B-team studio that will produce worse content. If anything, we still have a few of the core Cyberpunk 2077 leaders in this new team in Boston. Pavel Sasko, who is one of the lead developers on Cyberpunk 2077, will be working with the team closely for Cyberpunk Orion. And if you're a fan of Insomniac games, the name Mark Kenny may sound familiar too because this person will be working on Cyberpunk Orion's writing. In case you're curious about what this person has wrote before, I have a few games on your screen here which shows what this person has worked on in the past, and of course, the Wolverine game that's yet to come out. So we have a new studio, we've talked about the writer, and of course some of the past CD Projekt Red developers that are going to be working with Cyberpunk Orion. So what does this all lead to? What can we learn from this information? Well, we can definitely speculate on what CD Projekt Red will be doing with Cyberpunk Orion, and I have a few ideas that I would like to share. No doubt the story of V and Johnny Silverhand is in the past, and that will be the core of Cyberpunk 2077. We may even see more stories of Johnny Silverhand before the year 2077, but after the year 2077, I think that V and Johnny Silverhand stories are officially concluded. But that doesn't mean we don't have any hints about what Cyberpunk Orion's story will be or revolve around. See, there was a cut Cyberpunk 2077 DLC that took us to the moon. I should have a few images on your screen right now, and you can see that it was in the very early concept phase. Not a lot was done, but there was definitely something here. What I speculate this DLC was going to be was an all-out 5th corporate war. And with that being on the chopping block for Cyberpunk 2077, that means we may even get a whole game centered around the 5th corporate war. How our protagonist and future characters will be centered around the 5th corporate war is to be seen. While I've never played The Witcher Blood and Wine, everyone talks about that DLC like it's the best DLC to ever been made. So we know that CD Projekt Red has the potential to make really good DLCs, and Phantom Liberty was that really good DLC, but I wanted more. I wanted more and more Cyberpunk, as The Witcher and me have never really clicked. But that's close to all we have to go off of with Cyberpunk Orion. We only know a few of the people that are going to be working on the game. It's going to be on Unreal Engine 5, and that's kind of about it. But that also doesn't mean that there's nothing for you if you are a fan of Cyberpunk. We recently had the Edgerunners manga prequel that I just finished up. There's a few comics that are always releasing for Cyberpunk, and there's even a Cyberpunk 2077 novel that's voiced by Jeremy Lee, who is the voice of Female V. So in short, we have a lot of things that are happening in the Cyberpunk universe, but if you're only interested in the games, well, I think you might be waiting until 2029 or even longer. There's no doubt in my mind that CD Projekt Red will reuse Night City for Cyberpunk Orion, so they have some development assets they could reuse, but this is still a brand new team in Boston, they're still building up the team members, and The Witcher 4 lore isn't even out yet, so there's no doubt that CD Projekt Red doesn't have this coming out in the next 2 or 3 years. Even though we know nothing about Cyberpunk Orion, I still have a lot of hope and faith for this game, and I really want to see what it's going to be doing with the story and lore. But if you are excited for Cyberpunk Orion or even have a few ideas of what you'd like to see, I do like to read all the comments, so hopefully I see a few of those, and I hope you have a good day.